This is HighIntensityBusiness.com with Lawrence Neal, helping you achieve your health and fitness goals. Become a great personal trainer and build your high-intensity strength training business.
This episode is brought to you by ARX, the most innovative, efficient, and effective all-in-one exercise machines I have ever seen. I was really impressed with my ARX workout. The intensity and adaptive resistance was unlike anything I've ever experienced. I love how the machine enables you to increase the negative load to fatigue target muscles more quickly, and I love how the workouts are effortlessly quantified. The software tracks maximum force output, rate of work, total amount of work done, and more in front of you on screen, allowing you to compete with your previous performance to give you and your clients real-time motivation. The ARX uses a computer-controlled motor to give you the exact amount of resistance your clients need 100% of the time. This means that the resistance can never become dangerous, is intuitive and simple to use, and can provide you with all of the results you and your clients are looking for in a fraction of the time. ARX is highly effective and efficient in delivering all of the benefits of exercise, including increased strength, muscle mass, cardiovascular conditioning, bone mineral density, and injury recovery. As well as being utilized by many high-intensity trainers to deliver highly effective and efficient workouts to their clients, ARX comes highly recommended by world-class trainers and brands, including Bulletproof, Tony Robbins, and Ben Greenfield Fitness. To find out more about ARX and get $500 off install when you place an order, please go to arxfit.com and mention HIB, that's High Intensity Business, in the How Did You Hear About Us field. So again, to get $500 off install when you place an order, head on over to arxfit.com and enter HIB in the How Did You Hear About Us field. Lawrence Neal here, and welcome back to HighIntensityBusiness.com. This is episode 238. Today's guest is Skyler Tanner. Skyler is an exercise physiologist and founder of Smart Strength, a fast-growing personal training business based in Austin, Texas, in the United States. Welcome, Skyler, back to the show for the 100th time.
I have noticed that there's not been enough references to all of the old podcasts we have done with new guests. So I want to give them an opportunity to reference these podcasts.
That's it. And today we are doing a bit of a new experiment. I was quite excited to reach out to you, Wayne, because I know many years ago you had asked me if you could co-host an episode. And at the time, I think I just wasn't too sure about it. I wasn't perhaps comfortable about it. But it occurred to me that as someone who is early on in their high-intensity business career, so to speak, it would make a lot of sense for someone who's really in the arena to come on a podcast and talk to someone like Skyler, who's really done well with his business, and to have that conversation. So for those that don't know, Wayne is the owner of Quick Fit India, a high-intensity strength training studio using a combination of evidence-based exercise and the latest technology to bring you the most efficient, safe, and effective workout on the planet. Wayne, also welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Lawrence. I really appreciate this. I told all my friends and family I was guest hosting this podcast today. They're all fired up to hear this.
That's awesome. Well, you're welcome, and it's my pleasure, and I'm really pleased we could all do this. So as I was kind of alluding to in the pre-roll for this, my objective really for this is to give you the opportunity, Wayne, to really ask Skyler anything you'd like and anything he's comfortable answering, of course, on the topic of growing and running a high-intensity training business. You know, I think there's a lot of people out there who are in a similar position to you, Wayne, in their business, who might have similar challenges. And so I'm excited for this to be published, and obviously for the listeners to really get value out of this. Before I kind of pass the baton to you, Wayne, to ask questions, Skyler, do you just want to give a little background on your business, how long you've been in operation, and the growth you've experienced over the last few years?
Sure. 3 years as of 3 days ago. Which also means we paid off the business loan 3 days ago. So
congratulations and happy birthday.
So thank you. I kind of expected Tim Robbins, Shawshank Redemption, screaming shirt off in the rain excitement when we paid that last note. But really it's a little bit more like Bill Belichick on to the next week, on to the next week, on to the next week. Getting some distance from repayment. Actually, it'd be really great when next month we don't have that, about $3,000 going out in a fixed amount to one single debt. That will be really it's like graduate school or college. When you graduate, it's not the relief. You look back and go, oh, I worked really hard. I'm still kind of trying to take it in there. So 3 years, and we have grown. We've sustained about a 400% growth rate. So we've grown about 400% since buying the business as far as month over revenue. Some months a little higher than that. But even in our low months, it hovers right below that amount. So I'm using that as kind of the metric rather than sort of looking at my high water mark and saying that that's our absolute growth. And so that has been where we are at. We hired our first employee in the spring, and I handed him some of my clients. And any of us who are in this business, handing somebody clients in spring going into the down season of summer can sometimes be a little rough. But he's doing about 34 sessions a week right now. He has 3 free workouts next week. And so hopefully he continues to grow, and, he's really delivering on this stuff in his own voice. And I, on the business side, am still trying to figure out or, learning the best way to educate people who have the background in this stuff, but are not quite familiar with high intensity strength training or evidence-based resistance training, and sort of having them get the philosophical core of what we do, and then bring their own unique ideas from their sort of experience to bear on our clientele. So that's been my current challenge, and it's been a lot of fun.
Final question before I hand over to Wayne. So how many workouts are you doing roughly a week at this point?
At this point, okay, so I have scheduled on my calendar 83 sessions. In the spring, at sort of the peak before I hired Edwin, I had worked up to, I think my peak week, which was a really bizarre week, was 115, but it was up to around 110 sessions. And so now this week, Edwin will do, he'll do almost 35 sessions. So we're doing just almost 120 sessions a week as a business currently.
That's awesome.
In a 950, just under 950 square foot facility.
Amazing.
Gosh.
So,
yeah, that is fantastic, Skyler. Our businesses are so similar. We just turned 3 just 4 days ago as well. Not quite debt free yet, but looking forward to getting there really soon. So
I wish I didn't have to be debt free so soon. Let me tell you, the pucker factor in the middle was intense.
Right. No. I remember hearing your story when you first started out, and I was just starting out. So the podcast you had done with Lawrence, and those were pretty inspirational to kind of hear that someone else was going through the same things that I was going through as I started Quick Fit here in Indiana.
Yeah. I'm glad because, we hear the people who've been doing this a really long time, and they have a whole team around them. And, hearing Luke as much information and tons of information, and it's amazing because Luke figured out it's not about disclosing the information. It's about executing on that information. Right. Luke could give us his entire playbook, and a lot of people wouldn't be able to get it done because it's about execution. It's not about knowledge. And, but he is kind of like Discover Strength is the professional athletic team, right?
That's right.
You look at the Lance Armstrong and you're like, oh, look, he's doing, or the Michael. Every time the Olympics come around, there's inevitably somebody who's eating a gajillion calories a day, and everybody goes, well, I got to train like that if I want to be like that. It's like, well, yeah, you don't see their daily massage, their physio, their afternoon naps, their dietitian, all the support structure. Discover Strength is the professional athletic team. They have the full structure of a business. So, it's as great as that stuff is. It's challenging. I understand, to take the relevant aspects of that. So what is some version that actually works for your business? And so I hope for you that what I've tried to do from that and from other people is beneficial to you because we're in such a similar place.
It really has been. I remember, I think the first podcast I listened to you and Lawrence, one of the things you talked about was a smart start or a start smart program. Maybe this was going to be like a 1-year deal. Are you still moving forward with that program? Is that still a term that you're using or a process?
100%. So Start Smart is we start everybody who comes in our front door, assuming they're not a post-rehab handoff and I have some specific kind of continuing training I need to do, handing off from the PT to kind of keep them sort of finishing their rehab. Start Smart is just 8 to 12 weeks of pure super slow to start, because Westcott's studies demonstrated that people who do the pure super slow first made faster strength gains than those who did more moderate high intensity training in that first period. So if you want to get somebody really excited about the effort that they're putting in, then having those quicker gains are really compelling. It also gives you an opportunity to put your marketing money where your mouth is. And so seeing those gains, and remember, I am using an isometric mid-thigh pull as my absolute strength assessment done on the ARX Omni. And it's not a movement that we practice. So it has good efficacy both in the general population and the athletic population for predicting strength, function, and power. And so if we use that as our absolute variable strength, then training around that and coming back to it without practicing it and seeing that improvement in strength shows that the organism, the human, got better, and they like the visual and they find that really compelling and they're hooked.
That's excellent. For a new business, I know there's a lot of ARX users out there that are listening, that will listen to this. What about, do you have a recommendation for those high intensity studios that do not have an ARX where they could do maybe the same exercise or a different exercise? What do you recommend for them?
Absolutely. You could Google back and leg dynamometer. And actually, I am looking to move in this direction anyway, moving away from using the ARX, not because I don't like it or I don't have it as a tool, but I'm thinking long term. Remember, I have an old ARX prototype, and so I am not triaging is the wrong word, but I'm planning for a day in which that prototype might not work. I hope that day is far off, but you can use you can Google back and leg dynamometer. I think Takai offers a digital version out of Japan. Baseline is a company that offers one here in the States, and it's just like a 600 to 1,000 pound linear, almost like a fruit or vegetable hanging scale, or like the ones, if you hunt, the ones that typically you would weigh the carcass on.
Gotcha.
And you assume the same position on a platform that's been built for this, and it gives you a strength measure typically in pounds. Now, I find it compelling, and why I'm moving in this direction is because while you don't get the area under the curve visual that you get from the ARX, which is really cool, and one of the things I do see very interesting aside is that when we train people with the super slow and then retest them on the isometric mid-thigh pull, they always have a faster rate of force development. In other words, their peak is happening sooner in the 10-second pull cycle than it was at the very beginning, even with familiarity, even if I test them twice on the isometric mid-thigh pull. And from an athletic population, the rate of force development is often something that coaches are trying to improve, and I see improvements in the general population, not trying to make it faster. It's just a consequence of being stronger and being familiar with what it's like to contract hard. Anyway, the point I was making is that a lot of the data around population norms, in other words, when clients get done with it, they often ask, well, how did I do? How did I do compared to other people? And I don't have buckets, women 60 to 69 or something like that. That research hasn't been done. Right. But I have there's older data going back looking at sort of percentile population. So you'd have a sample size for men doing the exercise, 638 subjects. And, the percentile of 10th percentile is people who could barely pull 42 pounds of force. The 90th percentile in this mid-thigh pull position, remember, general population is 295 pounds of force. So you could say, oh, you're at this, and that puts you in about this percentile. So instead of having an area under the curve visually, you have more of a you're stronger than 50% of the population as per this test, or 75% of the population. And what I want to do, and what I'm doing, my big rock for the quarter, is I'm having somebody build me a client dashboard for their strength training progress on on an upper body push, a pull, a leg drive, a leg press, and then the isometric mid-thigh pull as the fourth measure. And so that'd be in a Google Doc dashboard. I can send the link to a client, and then I have in their folder, on my digital folder, a Google Sheet with the data. And as I just update the data quarterly, that they can just check in on their data. I don't need to be the gatekeeper. They have the link.
That's great.
So that's what I'm working on, or having worked on this fall. So I don't need the ARX if I don't want it for that test going into the future.
That's fantastic. I think maybe a video of that mid-thigh pull would be a great thing to maybe post for some of the newer studios.
I will. I don't need to send you a video. Canada, actually, I will link Lawrence to it. Canada uses it as part of its talent identification program and for the strength measure. So the sports, the countries that are smaller than America but somehow often do really well, what they have is talent transfer programs and talent identification programs. Okay. And so they get really good at transferring kids from one sport who might be slightly ill fit to another sport. And they do that with these big kind of training ground camps, and so that's what they do. And so I'll send Lawrence, I'll send this over to you right now, because the isometric mid-thigh pull is literally, they've got a section on it. They got a little video on it, and they have their age norms for kids between, 14 and north of 20. Send that over to you right now. Open conversation. Well, you both will see it, but there it is.
That's cool. Perfect. That's perfect. Is there anything else that goes into the StarSmart program other than just the super slow protocol for the first 8 to 12 weeks?
No, it's a structured program in the sense that I'm starting people off. You're basically a big five so it gets up to 9 exercises. So big five. In my case, my fifth, because my only vertical pull right now is the ARX. My fifth is a pullover, rather than a pull down. But then to that, I add the gluteator, leg curl, rotary torso, and lumbar. But that's just because those are, that's total body. I can typically get people through when they're in the early stages of workout, building that. Along the way, I use client education cards as per Discover Strength, my version of them. They have 10 little bits of information, more of the why behind the how, for clients as they're coming in who don't understand what we already do. Occasionally, we get somebody who's trained in this way before, and they've moved here, and they're looking to get back into it. By and large, most people don't know. And as I've said before in the past, you don't sell your high-intensity business on high-intensity training. So I make no mention about the lineage of our MedX machines or any of that, frankly, nonsense. I tell them, here's how this is going to make your life better. Here's how you are going to live your values out better and more, and do the things you would rather be doing more and better. It's about them. It's about what this can do for them. I often say, I love our equipment and it lets us do what we do so much better, but you would be suspicious of a carpenter selling you on his service based on the quality of his bandsaw. Right. You go, okay, show me what you can do with the bandsaw. Right? If it helps you do the job better, great. And so I make the point of the machines are very adjustable. I have very tall clients and very short clients. Everybody fits and it's very smooth. So it lets us do this stuff better. But that's all I say.
Right. Okay. That makes total sense. That's fantastic. Skyler, let's talk about some of the running the business. I know Lawrence is potentially getting fired up here to start a studio where he lives. Let's talk about something that you don't hear a whole lot from small shops like ours. What kind of hours are you running? Are you working 7 days a week? Are you working on Sundays? Are you working late at night? Are you split shifting? What does that look like for you?
Initially, it was semi-split shift, right? It was it was me working almost, whenever, right? And then it became because some of that though was semi-structured because I already had clients. I had a small amount of clients and they tended to be morning and midday. So I tried to fill in around them. But there was a while there where I was split shifting. I would work on a Tuesday from say 6 o'clock to 1. I'd go home. I'd try and take a nap, put some food down my neck and come back from 4 to 6. Never worked on the weekend. I only added Saturday once we brought in Edwin, our first employee. And he works afternoons, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and he works Saturday morning. Okay. So we didn't offer that. And in part because I have now 3 children. So I was willing to, in spite of the debt load, I was willing to do less because I didn't want to sacrifice that. Now, fortunately, they were young enough and we have enough of a support network that we could make it work. But I didn't offer that at the time. And I just worked later. And my mother's-in-law on those 2 days, when I was worked up to 110 sessions, she was just picking them up and I was coming home. So
that's great. I think a lot of maybe a lot of gym owners out there, studio owners might drive by the local 24-hour fitness place and, you see, because we do the same thing. We close up early evening, only open Saturday mornings. And, you drive by a 24-hour fitness place and there's 75 cars out in the parking lot at 10 o'clock at night on a Friday. And you think, man, are we missing the boat? Should we hire some more people and be open during these times? Or, who are we missing by not being open?
Right. It's a challenge because going back to the professional sports team, do you have the infrastructure to support and revenue to support having trainers who are, standing around with their thumb up their ass while they don't have clients just on the potential of clients? I mean, I can't answer that question, but I don't think for smaller facilities we do.
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't think there's a lot of small facilities out there that just have the access to just burn through money, like you said.
Right. Well, and it depends on how you're paying your employee, I suppose. There are some facilities that my understanding is, they offer an hourly rate plus session. So in other words, they're making minimum wage. But then on top of that, they're getting paid per session. All right. So it's compensating them for their time of the shift.
Right.
But it is also aligning, which Luke talked about in his getting trainers and building them, aligning the interest of the business, making more revenue, the interest of the trainer, making more money, the interest of the client being able to get in for a session. It's aligning all 3 of those values. And so depending on how you're paying your employees, that could work. We do some version of that with the way we pay our employee. But I could see if you were a larger company, how that might be really useful because you're telling people, look, you're not going to be getting nothing. You're not hanging out on potential, but you're not getting a lot. So you need to be focused on hustling and selling and improving your retention.
Right. With your new hire, is he incentivized for it, or are you prompting Edwin to go out and pull new members into the gym, or is that just solely your responsibility and he will get to reap some of the benefits of that by having more sessions?
Well, first of all, we as built into that client education process I talked about earlier with the cards, the last one is always reminding people while they're still excited in that early strength gaining phase that referring people gets them a free session. So they're pretty excited to punch that button at that point. And I've done no external outside of the first 3 months where we were just throwing all sorts of shit at the screen, seeing what went through the other side. Hat tip McGuff. We've done no external advertising, right? Zero, none. Now some of that, as a client of mine who I have this idea, I have such interesting clients, and like the Meathead talks to his clients as a podcast because incredible stories, people who are top of their field. It would be like Peter Attia's podcast, except without the obsessive OCD trauma-driven engineering background to sort of fetter away on details that don't matter for the population at large. But this guy, he gave it, and this was a compliment, by the way. He's like, yeah, but Skyler, you got that cult of personality thing. And so people are going to be reticent to give that up. And that's true. I mean, part of my rock this past quarter was getting myself outside of the sales, as being other than doing an initial phone screen with clients, the first person they see walking in the door is the person they're going to train with. So I can still run my mouth and get them excited or reinforce the excitement of the person who referred them. But then after that, it's up to Edwin to sort of keep the sale. And that, I think he's fine with that. He has social media kind of chops, but he self-identifies as an introvert. And so as he gets to know people, he's much more, you can see the quality of his conversation and interactions improving over time. Whereas I run my mouth like I know somebody from the moment I meet them.
Right.
It's just who I am. So I still take that on. I still play that side of the equation. And that seems to have slowly, as he's gotten better at delivering on the philosophical foundations of what we're doing and understanding, trying to kind of how we're trying to put people where they need to be, and understanding learning the people who you need to hold back. They will drive themselves to death, and we want to keep them as a client. That forsake the acute intensity for a little bit more of a chronic long-term adaptation. He's grown. His business has grown. So and he's our employee. So we do all the tax work for him and all of that other stuff. And that's part of our decision. We weren't going to have contractors, so we could have some control and some oversight.
That is fantastic. I think you've probably just answered my next question, which was, I think a lot of new studios, and Lawrence is going to go through this potentially, but you run specials and boot camps and all the popular stuff that a lot of gyms around us do. But it doesn't sound like you do any of that, or have you ever done any of that? And can you talk to those programs or boot camps?
Yep, sure. So I don't do any boot camps. I don't do any specials in that way, just because I don't have the bandwidth, right? So when I'm done here at 2 or 2:30, I immediately go home. If I'm done at 2:30, my son is out of school. My oldest son is out of school at 3. So I'm immediately either going to pick him up, or I'm quickly going home, grabbing some snacks, and then driving over to his school to pick him up. And then we go and pick his brothers up. And then I am parenting full time until my wife gets home. She's an assistant principal at a middle school. And so she'll get home somewhere between 5:30 and 6:30 currently, just because this is her first full year as assistant principal. She's still getting better. And sort of the efficiency of all of this, right? The more familiar you are, you know what is the wheat and what is the chaff. And so I don't have the time to do that. But the special I do run every March is I call it stronger, it's like stronger and with Smart Strength, or Smart Strength Stronger. That's what it is. And because it's my birthday month, I say, hey, anybody you refer who signs up in March subsidizes your April payment. So if somebody signs up for once a week and you're a once a week, you get April free, And so that often will get us a handful of clients. People are excited about that. And that really doesn't, I got that idea from Max Strength Fitness in Cleveland.
Okay. And so it really sounds from talking to you, I think, and this isn't just around high intensity strength training studios, but a lot of small businesses were always after that next client. Client acquisition is king. And I think a lot of people maybe spend a lot of money doing a lot of outward marketing and Facebook ads and Instagram and this and that. And it sounds like you really have driven your growth over the last 3 years, just focusing on the people that have already walked through your door, which is great. And who taught you this method? Was this just something from a previous place, your previous experience, or where did you get this innate ability to focus on the people right in front of you? Because that's hard for a lot of business owners.
Because, my talent is actually in human interaction, which is, I've had enough of my clients who've been with me long term, like 15 years. Before I started this business, I tried to I went through a crisis of having my first child and figuring out how the hell am I going to provide for this person. And that crisis was compounded by the rudderless ship that I was a partner in at Efficient Exercise. It just was not in a good place. It was, I had bought in as a partner, and it turned out not to be a good fit. So I tried to leave, and I was like, hey, I know people who are doing data science and data analysis, and there's, you go through graduate school, you have a lot of statistics. I could do that crap. And then I went through a program and I gained some of those skills, and it was just brutal. It was operating from a position of fear rather than a position of talent. And when we bought the business, it was kind of a Hail Mary. And, you can go back to other podcasts and hear me talk about that. But I had enough of my clients, like I said, the cult of personality thing, but also the point of I like the one-on-one interaction. It seems to me that there's some people who are in this business that I'm not sure why they're in the business, because by definition, the bulk of the business is the client interaction. Like some people come into it in a larger organization to an executive level kind of stuff.
Right.
Where they're going to do operations or they're going to manage marketing but there are some people who seem that they're not people, and yet they want to work with people. And so I don't mean to sound harsh, but it's a challenge that I think some people think they can systematize interactions with other human beings. And my challenge always has been relational and sort of energy switching, right? The ability to immediately adapt to the person in front of me and jive with them, which always felt sleazy to me. Lawrence and I have talked about this on another podcast, because that's like sales, right?
Right.
That is a component of sales, and yet all of my interactions I'm always selling the value of what we do and reinforcing those aspects of their life in which this is valuing it. And it's not because I need to sort of trick them into believing that it's valuable. I don't believe my clients are just frittering money away. I think many of them are too successful for that, to have had that, sort of accidentally fell upon success. But rather, when you're focused on doing something else with your life, and this is a component of it, it almost needs to be brought to your attention, the wide net that this is casting and the way it's influencing other aspects of your life. And being reminded of that reinforces the excitement you have for the work you're doing. And then you mirror what I'm telling you, and you say, oh, I did this thing and it was great. Or as it turns out, because of my community, I've become the osteoporosis guy, right?
Okay.
I've become, because as it turns out, middle-aged women have money to spend, and they want to look better, feel better, perform better, and they don't want to be on bone drugs. So once you get some traction on building bone mineral density, all of a sudden you have people who can afford your services, are going to work hard, are less concerned with, the fact that the skin on their ass is sagging because they're in their middle age, and that's the way this stuff happens. They're just happy to have good energy and be strong and not have to take drugs, and they're willing to pay for that. So I've accidentally become that guy too.
Is that your messaging, Skyler? Is your messaging? Because and let me give this some context. Almost 100% of the people walk through our doors, and they're completely focused on weight loss. They think, okay, how am I going to lose weight working out 20 minutes once or twice a week? Or has your messaging, how do you handle that situation, that first person walking through the door and it's all about weight loss for them?
I tell them, I say, we focus 100% on strength. Strength is the currency that you live your life by. It's the foundation of anything else you want to do. And if your goal is fat loss, that's part of the education and me just roping them in. But you're going to have to reduce calories. And oh, by the way, strength training maintains or even gains lean tissue. So you look better at a given weight loss. You don't lose the lean mass, which would mean you have to lose more weight and you feel worse to look kind of like a sloppy version of yourself already. You change the way you look by adding resistance training. I don't sell fat loss. I tell people, if your goal is fat loss, I have registered dietitians and nutritional counselors I will refer you out to. Part of what I've tried to do is stay strong in my niche and build and sort of be that handoff. I have 3 PTs who hand people off to me. I have a registered dietitian I send people to, and she sent 1 or 2 people over to me. I've built that referral network through those results, and trying to also, I'm trained as an exercise physiologist, so I can speak their language, which helps. But the proof is in the pudding when I can sort of speak their language and say, hey, actually Patty said this with your podcast, Lawrence, where she said, the most common injury is a re-injury. So if we could just keep people from getting re-injured, that goes a long way in sort of providing value, and then working, you just develop those relationships over time. So I don't focus on weight loss. I focus on strength, utilizing joint friendly fitness, hat tip Bill DeSimone, and doing that in no more than an hour a week. So you can actually, what I often say is, so you can get hurt doing the things you'd rather be doing, playing basketball and swinging wildly at block shots in the corner, rather than just trying to go full Bill Russell. Lawrence, you just got to tap that ball. You just got to perturb it. You just got to tap it, and you've got gather the rebound. Says the guy who loved pinning the ball against the backboard on block shots. I get it. I digress.
This episode is brought to you by our sponsor, ARX. Are you looking to create a cutting-edge, high-intensity training facility? Are you confused on what equipment to use or how to separate yourself from the masses? Well, then ARX Fit might be the answer you're looking for. I asked Mike Polano from ARX a few questions about how ARX machines are challenging the status quo of the exercise industry around the globe. Mike, if you could, give the listeners a quick summary of why ARX is so different from the traditional machines or tools they're used to seeing in most exercise facilities.
ARX is totally different than anything you've seen before. This isn't just another weight stack machine. We've looked at the last 40 years of exercise technology and used that knowledge to create something entirely new. ARX uses a new form of resistance, a motor, and we pair that motor with computer software so that we can maximize the safety, effectiveness, and efficiency of your workouts. So you may be asking, okay, but how does ARX compare to weights? Traditional machines you see in gyms today are based on lifting metal weights and battling gravity. What people don't realize is that when you're forced to lift a static weight like this, one that doesn't adapt or change while you use it, you're underloading yourself rep after rep. And this unnecessarily limits your ability to make improvements. With ARX, we've taken a totally different approach. We removed weights and gravity from the equation altogether. Instead, ARX combines our patented motorized resistance with our custom computer software to provide you with the world's safest, most effective, and most quantified form of resistance training ever. When you train with ARX, you are training to your perfect level of resistance, both positively and negatively 100% of the time. No more guessing what weight to use. ARX does all of that for you, instantly and automatically. We'll also track and measure every second of every rep, so you can quantify all of your workouts to find out if you're improving and by exactly how much. Whether your goals are bigger muscles, increased strength, stronger bones, or just to look good in a bathing suit, ARX can help you achieve all of these and more, but do so in a fraction of the time it would take compared to traditional equipment. If you're looking for the most efficient, most effective, and most quantified piece of exercise equipment on the market today, then look no further than ARX.
Thanks, Mike. That all sounds really impressive. If you'd like to learn more about ARX, visit arxfit.com and mention that you heard about ARX on the High Intensity Business podcast to receive an exclusive deal of $500 off shipping and installation of your ARX machines.
So anyway, the point is that I don't do fat loss. My messaging is not fat loss. It's in the name Smart Strength. It's on 22 minutes twice a week, twice as strong. That's my messaging. And I will send, if somebody is focused on fat loss, I send them to an expert. And I don't try to be everything to everybody. I had somebody who, I want people who want me to be their guy. I don't want people who want 12 weeks of me, and then they're off. So my messaging is really, I really key in on, I've had people for 15 years. And for some people, if I wasn't on their calendar, they wouldn't be doing this stuff at all. That trying to be that resistance training touch point for them, and also the node in that referral network that can get them competent people that they need should they need it.
That's fantastic. Talk a little bit about your, do you use Mindbody? Do you use another app to schedule? How do you handle that within your business? Credit card?
Mindbody, and I just auto charge at the first of the month for either once a week or twice a week. I have some people who are on my calendar twice a week. They're charged once a week, and when they sort of blow through that, depending on their travel schedule, I a la carte the remaining sessions. I also will sell packages a year in advance, 6 months in advance, depending on the clients and what they want to buy. And for that, I ask for cash or check because I don't want to pay the credit card fees.
Right. And do you have a minimum time frame that someone can sign up with you? You're not going to let me come in and work out with you for 1 month and leave you, are you?
I absolutely will. I say, look, so I don't have a contract. I don't have a minimum, but I tell people this is a long-term investment. And if you think you're going to see huge results in 4 weeks, you might not even make the first purchase. You have to do some version of what got you here to keep you here. And just like a diet, the diet that got you lean, you have to do some version of that to keep the leanness. This is going to take your body is building this stuff from scratch, and it takes time. So if you're just looking to have a workout du jour for the next month, I'm not your guy. I say the best clients are those who have other things going on in their life. Actually, that's one in my sort of little spiel to clients. I used to have this hour-long consultation. Now I do a 15-minute screener to make sure people aren't like trying to get backdoor rehab or just want to try something out for a month. And then I have a 5-minute version of the first half of my initial consultation that I follow up with on video. And I say our best clients are good communicators who value their time and have things that they want to do other than live in the gym. And so I am deliberately in my language trying to keep people I don't want to train or I don't want to waste my trainer's time out of the gym. That doesn't mean they need to be flush with money. They want to be with us for 10 years. But people understand that, or I'm trying to educate that strength training, building strength, building lean tissue, even when it's most efficient, it's not magic. It still takes time. We're just trying to minimize the downsides and maximize the upsides per unit of time.
That's great. I'm writing some of this down. This is some good stuff here. Any other tools? So you use Mindbody. Any other tools? Website builders?
I use G Suite for my sort of document building. Let's see here. I'm going to send this over to you here. What I wish I would have organized, or I had a version of sooner, and I'm trying to work on. Kyle Rechia, in the COO of Perfect Workout, talked about, getting the standard operating procedures out, but it's kind of like, what's the structure for that? So I'm linking right now. I sent it to Lawrence. It's that post that should be popping up in your chat window called Building the Business Machine. And it's all about building a standard operating procedures document. And they give you templates. They give you structure. They give you, here's your next step. Here is your next step for those repeating tasks that we have. And so I have a lot of documentation kind of on the back end, but I'm trying to drag it into this more structured format not for Edwin, but more for the next employee. So the on-ramp is smoother. For the next employee, so the on-ramp is smoother. Whenever that happens to be. And so the sooner, I would suggest anybody who's young in their business life and has the latitude to do this, even if it's just one line of this. Actually, one of the things that Lawrence and I are working on right now, or I am working on, and I'm offered it to Lawrence under the guise of I will be able to cite high intensity business as my employer as an e-learning instructional designer, is a little 10 to 15 minute learning video for how I've implemented a version of getting things done that, again, is scaled to the size of our business. There's a cult around David Allen and getting things done. And it makes sense if you're a really giant organization, but there's a lot of problems with getting things done if you're like 3 people. There are good things in there. There are great things in there. But I'm building a video and kind of explaining how I've implemented a version of that you can then modularly build on top as you need the increased functionality. Because literally on the Getting Things Done website, it's a giant monolith. But and it says, where should you start? And they say, start anywhere. No, you do not give people endless choice. That is tyrannizing. You cannot give it 75 salad dressings. You're going to pick one and it's going to suck because you thought you could get perfect. You think that just because you have endless choices, you can get perfection, and you cannot. There's an entire book written on this called The Paradox of Choice. Too little choice, that's tyrannizing. I only have one option. Well, what the fuck? Too much choice, you think that your fleshy, imperfect humanity can find perfection, and you can't. You cannot do that. So having a little structure and saying, look, start here because it gets you the most. It's just like all I've done is the big 5 of a productivity system. The big 5 is imperfect. By definition, it is imperfect. But it gives you the essentials. It works most of the muscles in your body. You can build that as a foundation. Adding on to it is necessary, or scaling back to it is required. It doesn't optimize for anything, but it doesn't leave anything out that is non-essential. So caffeine, awesome. So my point though is that you have this entire, all the people who are on the cult of getting things done are in much larger organizations where they have all of these moving parts and they're singularly focused on sort of the business widgets. We, who are people who are still in the business, I don't have time for that, right? I want to have a seasonal rock. I want to prioritize what I'm doing. And so with that prioritization, one of the things that we talk about, or you and I were coming back to this, is that when we're talking about doing other things outside of the business, oftentimes it shows up on a to-do list in a monolithic kind of do this way. One of the things I found really valuable with standard operating procedures or this version of getting things done is designating the input time. Instead of saying, do taxes, work on taxes, do payroll, whatever, it's work on, for me, it would be like work on client strength dashboard for 30 minutes. Because there's a lot of things that I cannot control, like we're talking about website building or it's say, write this to the web designer. It's not finish this. It's do this for X amount of time. I can control that input. There are things outside of my control. So I think that helps people, especially if they're working on components of a larger project, to chunk it out and feel like they're making progress rather than looking at this to-do list and going, oh, how the hell am I going to do all of that? So I found that to be helpful as well, that designating how much time I'm going to work on something as the input, understanding that the output has factors that are outside of my control.
That's fantastic. So Lawrence, I think, is 2020 is going to be a big year for him. He's going to continue with the podcast, potentially open up his own studio. What do you say to someone out there that's just now discovering this and thinking about, buying some ARX machines or some equipment and going out on their own? Is there anything that you would do? What would you do the same? Obviously, you got a lot of great things, but what would you do different, or what kind of advice would you give that brand new person getting ready to make the plunge?
Okay. That I would get there. I think that scripting some of your interactions and getting better at that scripting is helpful. When clients email me, I have email templates, so I don't have to think about it. I worked on them so that the communication of what I want to communicate at what point is clear, and I just drag it out of my G Suite document and I plug it in there. So rather than trying to reinvent the wheel every time, I do a lot of scripting. As far as how I talk to clients or some version of how I want to communicate something with them in the early stages. It's because it's like, how can I make the relevant information timely and consistent from client to client? That's also part of the reason for StarSmart. I don't want to have to reinvent the wheel for clients so we can communicate and deliver on our marketing message. Because as it turns out, your elbow bends the same way as my elbow. Their knee is going to bend the same way as your knee. Anatomical function is anatomical function. And so I want to, just the same reason as I wear the same outfit to work every day, not because Steve Jobs did it. I didn't grow up in Silicon Valley. I don't have a cult of Steve Jobs mindset, but because I don't want to have to think about recurring processes. I shouldn't have to, because in those early stages, there's all the things you're trying to learn about a client that are the unknown unknowns. If you're trying to do that while also reinventing the wheel, it's just a lot of thinking that goes on. It's hard enough to get people to disclose to you some 3-year-old injury that they forgot to leave on the medical health history report. That might be why their knee hurts on the leg curl, right?
Right.
The other thing that I think is helpful, I mean, marketing's challenging because I already had some people, so I could mine that referral network, and they wanted to see me succeed. They saw the excitement I had. They saw the vulnerability too. Look, it was like a lot of them had their own businesses or their own successes, and had gone through something similar. So they were willing, because not just because I was their service provider and they wanted to continue to have my service, but they were also excited about what I was doing and the desert I was wandering out into, that they had their feelers out a little bit more. They were thinking about that a little bit more. And
Skyler.
so I don't, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt there. I was going to say, if you didn't have those people and you were starting today, how would you go out and get your first client?
That is, I think then at that point, even though the marketing didn't bring me a lot that I did early on in my kind of efforts here, I did get a little traction on that. I was using some of the we have a local paper called Community Impact, or the Westlake Picayune, or those sorts of local papers. And I paid for a little advertising in one, and it kind of had a little traction. That worked for me. And also just the communication with, it's hard to say because I've been around this game for so long. Right. Inevitably for a lot of us who have, we have a first or second degree kind of traction within our clientele. But coming up from scratch, I was probably that positioning amongst anything to go, hey, look, I know, registered dietitian, that you have people who you're not the exercise person.
Right.
Rather than going to the yoga studio and saying, hey, we're going to make your yoga better, although it does. Rather going to some of those categorically similar health and wellness facilities, but that aren't exercise, and that don't try to offer an exercise component, because sometimes you get like the nutritionist who also does boot camps, and it's like those people are just that's their obsession. That's what they do. They want to hang out in the gym. They want to fetter around about nutrition. You go to the registered dietitian who's just the registered dietitian, and that's all they do. And they want a handoff from somebody who is going to, who doesn't want to hurt the people who are just trying to get their diet right, or the PTs or the manual therapists who you're poking around on their website and you're looking at the language, and the language is similar to what we do. You're talking about, the rehab world. If you talk about anatomical joint function, they're all in on that. I mean, we're speaking their language. It's just, they often get people who, they leave and they immediately go and try and deadlift, or they go to a CrossFit box or something like that, and they want to have that handoff. So yeah, PTs, I've gotten a couple PTs who've become really good, but it was just trying to, just reach out to them in the local area and make that connection, and it's worked out really well.
That's great. Well, Skyler, I know you're running low on time.
Well, hold on. My client texted me and canceled. So if you've got to go at 11, or for me 4 minutes, then great. But I have a little bit more time now.
Well, I'm fine. I'm fine. Or Lawrence, jump in there.
No, you can. Well, if that's the case, if Skyler's okay with that, then yeah, we can run over. So Wayne, please continue. What would you want to do, Skyler? Run till 1:15?
Let's see. My 11:30 client is often late, but let's say 20 minutes past.
Okay, great. Fine. Great, thank you.
Great. All right. So Skyler, you just trained and performed this 25K run. So obviously you're out there. I think from some of the training you did, you probably did a little bit of what most people would call some cardio training. Do you do any cardio training outside of just the strength training in the gym, or do you promote it to some of your clients?
So what I tell my clients is that I want them doing more of the things they would rather be doing, right? And by that I mean what I want them to think about is, rather than trying to optimize an enjoyable experience and make it miserable, right? Like, I want to go on this bike ride and it's clearly going to be cardiovascularly beneficial, or I want to jump in a spin class with my daughter and have fun with that, and maybe make that a regularly occurring thing. What I tell people is that I talk about the active phenotype. I go, as you get stronger, you're going to want to do something with this strength. And that actually bears out in the literature to some degree. The people who they start resistance training, all of a sudden they start doing more things. And you see that on pedometer studies. As imperfect as they are, they're at least directionally accurate. And so I don't say you should do more cardio. I talk about how getting stronger improves the cardiovascular efficiency at efforts and activities of daily living. So they're not going to feel as out of breath. They'll probably end up doing more things because they're stronger and get a little bit more of that low level cardiovascular activity just in the bargain. And if there was something they wanted, if they enjoy plodding on the treadmill or jumping on the bike or the elliptical for their head, and they like getting sweaty and all that, by all means, go for it. Just understand that what I want them to do is not crowd out the quality of their strength training effort by doing too much of that around their workout. But otherwise, I'm not reinventing the wheel. Nautilus, years and years ago, that was their marketing message of, look at all the time you'll have for other things. And somewhere along the way, it became doing anything other than this is a waste of time, and you're just going to wear yourself out and get injured. Now, at the University of Texas, 2 studies have been done looking at physical inactivity leading up to a structured bout of exercise. And if you're sedentary, you reduce the efficacy of the exercise bout, as measured not by the performance in the exercise, but by the health, the lagging indicator of health improvements as a result of the exercise. So they would pedal on a cycle ergometer at 70% of their maximum heart rate for an hour. And it was a crossover design, so both groups did the same intervention in line, right? So the group that did intervention A, group that did intervention B for 3 weeks or for 3 days, flipped and did the opposite intervention the next week. So it wasn't because you just got some non-responders on one group and the responders on the other. And what's been demonstrated is that if you're up, moving around somewhere, 10,000 steps or over, just being physically active, and then you do a bout of exercise, you clear triglycerides from your blood due to a nutrition challenge, basically a high-fat, high-sugar milkshake, better than if you are physically inactive, less than 4,000 steps a day, 3 days before that same exercise bout, and then the same nutrition challenge. Does that make sense? The only difference is that the group that was physically inactive, they weren't exercising, they took 8,000 fewer steps and they were sitting more. They basically muted the health response of the exercise. Now, this is very different than the live in a hyperbaric chamber because Ken Hutchins tells you to line of reasoning that we get in a lot of this stuff. And even McGuff has talked about that. He said, when I started my business, I thought I'd have these, people think that just because I am the guy who wrote the book and they quote it to me chapter and verse, that my people come in and they're perfect, super slow monks. They move 10 up, 10 down, they breathe, they go to failure until they're quivering mass on the ground. But that's not the way, and then they do nothing else. They do nothing else. That's not what happens at all. As you get stronger, you're going to want to do more stuff. We were joking about it on our little chat yesterday, but Bryce was like, Skyler, you've got it all wrong. The point of doing muscle strengthening exercise is to do more muscle strengthening exercise. But that's how a lot of us, it's kind of that's what it is. Like, oh, why are you getting strong? What are you getting stronger for? Well, so I can keep getting stronger. It's like, well, I get it. You want to be productive. You don't want to waste your time. But I've been the same muscular size for I don't know how long, in spite of my best efforts to get more muscular. And so what the reason why I did the 25K and I encourage my clients is you're going to want to do something with this. What you value, let what you value determine what that is. And if you're doing something I think that might be dangerous, given what I know about your previous injury history, then I'm going to tell you about it. I'm going to give you an idea as to how to do it more safely in a way that might be more enjoyable. But otherwise, like if somebody was a swimmer and they got frozen shoulder from swimming and they're urging to get back in the pool, I'm like, well, don't do the freestyle. Maybe focus on breaststroke because of this injury history. But great that you want to take the strength and get back in the pool because that brought them joy.
Right. That's what everyone wants. Everyone wants to just live their life. Like you said initially, you got to bring it back to them. Why are they in there? Yep. And what do they want to do with this strength?
So that's important because customer service, I think Lawrence sent this out, but customer service is not catering to every whim of the client. That's important because I tell clients all the time, I'm not going to let you waste our time. But if some exercise just psychologically isn't jiving with you, you don't like something about it, we're going to find some version that you can bring some intensity to and progress over time, right? That's the negotiation, the client interaction. That's the customer service. It's like, no, I know what you need. But if you can't get on board with the A+ solution, let's find the B+ solution because you got to do some version of it long enough to reap the benefits. So it's that important interaction between satisfying what the client wants, but the client is paying you to be the expert.
That's right. Do you have clients come in that they cannot get that intensity? It's just not in their nature. And how do you work through that for that particular person?
Sure.
And maybe they're scared. Maybe they've had an injury. Maybe they're just. We have people that come in and just. They just refuse to push hard and bring that intensity level up, or maybe they're nervous. They've got an old knee injury or shoulder injury. How do you work through some of those for some of the new people out there?
I definitely am on the longer is better rate of improvement. I microload in the gravity-based systems, even if somebody can drill themselves. Because your workout is not divorced from the stressors of the rest of your life. And for a lot of those type A people, I actually just had a client come in yesterday whose husband trains with us. And she's like, look, he comes home and he's thinking about quitting because he's a quivering mess. And he doesn't train with me, he trains with Edwin. But he will not tell our trainer he has too much he has too much trauma from being a fat kid. So he will work, and he also will work himself to death in his own career, right? Like she's like, he's just going to die an early death, and that's the way it goes. But she's asking us to back the intensity off so he can stay with it longer, right? Now, so my type A people who are willing to kill themselves, I don't indulge them in that desire all the time because that psychologically becomes unsustainable, even if physically they have no injuries. The willingness to bring it that hard every single time correctly, it's a tough nut to crack. I mean, those of us who were at, the rec conference, I wasn't there last year, but the year before, 2018, the best part, this is the type of workout, Luke like slapping his dick on the table. This is the type of workout all of our clients go through. I'm like, no, they don't, because they don't have 12 trainers at each station drilling them and trying to beat them up. They don't do that. They do versions of that, certainly. But when you have a relationship with someone, you have a blink test, they can bring it today. They can't bring it today. I see they're already struggling, or man, they're looking real linear, where they don't seem to be, as they're working harder, they seem to be able to match that effort rather than falling behind the 8 ball. That's part of the relationship. And that is the challenge with, or that's not the challenge. That is the type of people always want to go, and you're normally holding them back because they will break themselves, and that they need to be in it for the long game. So for the people who can't bring it, I use either because of motor issues, previous injury issues, because their intensity is not very high. They cannot bring it.
Right.
It's isometric holds. It is at the end of the work set. It is sometimes it is a drop set. Sometimes it is rather than do a second set, I'd rather do a second exercise for the same area.
Okay.
So I'm trying to accumulate a little bit more. And a little bit more work by way of that. And it's important. Just you have to remember that if you look at the way these people train, especially when they first come into you, and I'm sending this little widget over to you called Just Load It, which is from the Science PT. It's a flow chart. And if you think about it, instead of loading it for rehab, think about it as loading it for a client. And it's kind of the same flow chart. It's like you try and have them do an exercise. Do they have some hesitancy? Can you do the exercise differently? Can you do a different exercise? Can you just do isometric holds? Like, what are the things that you can do to get them to a high degree of effort? Dwayne Wimmer talks about this as he calls it, we're trying to get to maximum effort rather than muscular failure, because of it's a positive spin. But it's also the idea that it's not a finite point in space. Your maximum effort today is going to be very different than it is next week. It'll be self-similar, but it might be a rep low. It might be much higher because of the life that the person is bringing into the studio. And so being able to adjust on the fly for that is something that you need to do. But for the clients who, if they're not injured, they're just really weak, psychologically treating them like they're injured and doing more holds and trying to get them to feel their muscles. And I tell them, expand their discomfort, getting used to what high effort feels like and learning to divorce that feeling from pain or injury or warning takes time. And as long as they're working as hard as they can, or harder than they would be willing to otherwise, without you there is an overload and there is a benefit.
That's good. That's good stuff. So you mentioned earlier you are using the gravity-based machines. Will you talk for a second about how do you measure for a client? Do you measure time under tension, weight? What protocol do you go through there to measure for a client?
Most of my clients do time under load. My next client, she is pretty controlled, and she prefers much more of a rep count kind of 8 to 12 repetition kind of scenario, kind of much more classic hit, lifting in about 2 to 3 seconds up, lowering in 4 seconds. And she was a skinny runner, and now she's a lean and strong runner in her late 40s. And so she's just drinking the Kool-Aid. So it depends on the person. Everybody starts off time under tension, and most people go off time under tension. I always explain to people, I'm like, look, I like super slow most of the time, just in my own personal workouts, because I can go in. I can get outside of numbers because I'm looking at everybody else's numbers all day long. And I can pin on a weight and I can just focus on what my body has given me that day. But then for them, it's going to be, I've got some people, they just super slow tyrannizes them physically, right? Emotionally, they have a really hard time moving that slow. Others, it's all they want. They want to have that meditative horse and rider in perfect harmony communication with their body. And so you try and introduce something else to them, they're like, I like super slow. You're like, cool. As long as you're bringing that high degree of effort, it's all good.
That's great.
And I'll use a force overload techniques or other protocols as like plateau breakers. Like a 30-30-30 for me is a huge plateau breaker. If somebody's kind of bumping up against a weight limit, I can throw a 30-30-30 at them if they have good control, and magically they add time into load the next workout. Or Owen Dockham and on the Everstrong San Francisco page recently posted about using stage repetitions for one workout on a client with an overhead press, and then the next workout, the time under load from the workout prior to the stage repetition went up 12%. So using that novelty to try to help a client continue to progress rather than novelty for novelty's sake is how we tend to do things. But it's all about, did they feel, I always ask them at the end, do you feel like something happened? You feel like you got a really good workout? And the answer is yes. And over time, they're generally moving up. It's all good.
That's great. And so time under load, do you also use time under load when using the ARX machines?
So the ARX, we primarily oscillate when we're using them between a countdown mode and the time trial. Typically, we'll do countdown mode to a fixed minute or a minute 15 interval. And then when that well starts to run dry, we'll switch to a time trial mode. Because you've seen this, if people have a certain distance they have to go, time-wise, they will sandbag just a little bit. And then magically their last negative is better than like the 2 negatives prior to it.
Right.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
So then you move to time trial and you say, look, you're going to match the force output hurry up and get it done. As fast as you can get it done, it'll be over with. If you could pull harder, hurry up and get it. And I got that from a former, I guess he technically was one of my employees, Bo Alexander, who has a facility, 3 facilities between Austin and Dallas called Adapt Strength and Conditioning.
Yep.
And he has some ARX, and he was like he's a powerlifter. So he's sort of like, it's a rate of force development thing. You know, when clients know that if they can dig harder, they can get it done sooner, they magically find a way to get it done sooner. But I think that only works when you're sort of minute, or your countdown mode is in the minute 15 to a minute and a half range. Because when it's under a minute, you've got a real fine margin for improvement. You don't typically see people who has a countdown mode of a minute, and then you go, okay, well, let's do time trial, and they're magically finishing in 40 seconds.
Right.
That's a 33% improvement. It tends to work better with sort of maxing out a minute and a half, 15 minute and a half, and then switching to time trial mode for a few workouts, and watching that the rate at which they're getting that output come way down, or go way up, and then hence the time comes way down, and then going back to countdown mode because they now know what it's like to pull hard, and then going back to that minute and a half countdown mode, and you see that number come up.
Do you ever push a client past the minute and a half mark, minute and 45 seconds?
The only time I do that is for my diabetic clients, I will use the leg press. I will do a concentric only protocol, and I will let that run longer because it's just less demanding physically. And I'm trying to empty the muscles as much glycogen as possible. And due to something called the Fenn effect, concentric contractions are more energetically expensive than eccentric contractions, which is why eccentric contractions are stronger. It takes more energy to split to unbridge the cross bridge, or to break the cross bridges in a contraction, which is why we can lower more weight than we can lift. Energetically, it's more expensive to create the contraction, which is the cost is coming from glycogen. So these people who I'm trying to create a bigger sink for them to store glycogen, positive only work. So push as hard as they can, relax through the negative. Push as hard as they can, relax through the negative. I'll have them run upwards of 3 minutes on that. And so it's they don't fall off nearly as much on their strength. Like the peaks are pretty consistent. So it's an interesting protocol, but that's really the only exception, which I have them do really long time under loads.
That's fantastic. Well, Skyler, happy birthday to your business, and congratulations on everything you've done. And thank you for letting me pick your brain today. Absolutely.
I'm glad I could help. And yeah, I mean, I love all the resources Lawrence has, and it's, Lawrence, you have such a great resource, and one that I continually go to. But I do understand the other side of the equation when you hear somebody like Luke or some of these other, or Matt Hedman or Kyle Recchia with these large organizations, and it's almost like it's a perfect circle. You have no idea where you would even apply these ideas in your own business because it's in the same area, and yes, we're all doing training, but it's so dissimilar to how we in the business are also trying to work on our business. So I hope some of this stuff, I hope some of what I've said today can help. You can kind of see the relationship between some of those other things that come from the people who are much further ahead on the path than we are, and see how I've tried to apply a version of it given the scale that we're operating at.
You're doing a great job. I think the thing I'm most impressed with from your business is your ability to get referrals from your existing clients. This is, again, not just high intensity training, but this is all small businesses. That's the coup de grace, if you will.
Well, with the 4 minutes I have left, this is it's a bit like think about the lifetime value of a client, right? Think just somebody who's been with you a long time. I just had a woman sign up for a year in advance. She does twice a week, and then her husband does once a week. But he probably will switch to twice a week here pretty soon. And she wrote me a check for $8,000, right? Wow. And so what I think people have is you're talking about chasing the new client, and also I think the inverse of that is being unwilling to spend money on your own clients. And so that idea of when I do that referral month in March, I am happy to have a referral, a good referral who signs up, cost me the monthly rate of a client who already exists, because the lifetime value of a client is so much more.
Yeah,
it's only flat revenue in the short term. Because let's say I get 5 new clients and a year later, 3 of them have stayed on. Okay, well, I've made my money made my investment many times over. And then they've probably referred people to me also.
Yeah, that's great. That is something that it really looks like you're doing that really well.
Yeah, I think that you delight the people you already have. It's like Gary Vaynerchuk going on and on about entrepreneurs wanting to get investment, which means they are now indentured to somebody else monetarily and not getting as excited about getting new business and having recurring customers. Cash is king, man. I mean, if I can get more out of the people I already have, that is huge. And I can't I can't trick them into, getting rid of their money. They're doing it because they see the value in what we do. And so I focus on that because it's so close.
Gary V wants you to put out 100 social media posts a day though.
Yeah, but I don't have to, again, I don't have to follow all of Gary V.
Right. That's right. That's right.
And to my point earlier is, what is the wheat for our situation and what is the chaff, right? What is that? I don't need to take everything. He's just complaining about the investment culture of Silicon Valley. And I think sometimes the version of that with us is always the new client, never delighting the client we already have.
Yeah. Well,
do you ever run into Tim Ferriss there in Austin?
I've seen his shiny bald head on South Congress a couple times while I'm driving by. Because I know about where he lives, and I'm waiting to run into him because I got when Tools of Titans came out, I got a marketing email that said I was one of his top 50 blog post commenters, which I thought was really funny because I don't post there. The few times I've posted, he accidentally sent people to my blog because I had shared a Supersize Me Under Lab condition. So when he interviewed Morgan Spurlock, he sent them to my blog and gave me credit for it. So I popped on there. I was like, "Hey, fan, I didn't do this study."
Yeah, that's fantastic.
So that was so I ended up getting this. They're like, "You can have my book in advance or a $50 Amazon gift card." I'm like, "Give me the Amazon gift card."
Yeah.
Gents,
please get Lawrence an autograph next time you see him.
Yeah.
When I see him, I'll walk up to him and I'll probably have like all 3 kids and be like, "Hey, I'm one of your top 50 blog posters according to your marketing department."
Right.
Nice.
So I'm just really conscious of Skylar's time. Skylar, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. Wayne, I think you're ready to start your own podcast, mate. You're far better at this than I am. Skylar, do you want to just talk about your new Hit Uni course quickly?
Yeah. So the Hit Uni course is called Running with Strength, and it is a collaboration between myself and the team over at Hit Uni. Simon is his wonderful wife, Joanna. They came out to Austin last year. We fed them copious amounts of beef and tacos and took them to icy cold springs in the heat of the summer. And we filmed components of this course, and we've been chipping away at it ever since this past year. And it is, in effect, the distillation of everything that I've learned on my kind of transition from, because I was a power athlete. I played basketball. We talked about that. Was a high jumper, and my wife was a cross country runner. And as any good sort of hit cultist, as a true hit Jedi, it was my job to make fun of runners. It was just running. This is stupid. You're going to hurt your knees. But then I realized I didn't have any daddy issues, and I could make my own decisions, and I got educated. And that became, when I had my first child, the only one of the few ways my wife and I could spend time together, because she was just trying to get her own workouts, given her own work schedule, was when we were pushing our son around Town Lake on Saturday mornings. So it was a way to be with her and also be active. And then I ended up jumping in a few turkey trot type races and really enjoying the effort and the challenge and the competition again. Only this time competition against myself rather than, an innovation sport like basketball. And the ability to not need a bunch of other people to do it. And so then, finding the work of Andrew Magnus and Aaron Olson and sort of my own background and my own training as a clinical exercise physiologist, kind of putting this stuff together and trying to figure out how do you take somebody who has this big foundation of strength and understands intensity, and then transferring that into something like running, and where we use a lot of the same words, intensity and effort and sort of maximum, but it's different, right? It's not sprinting when you're doing fast intervals. It's not sprinting. It's not as fast as you can go in a long rest period. There's a whole different dynamic involved. How do I take people, bring them back to the skill of running, which is a very complex skill, and do it safely so that, Lawrence, you've done this. Nobody paid you. You didn't get a gold medal or a paycheck for doing those obstacle course races, and they bust your ass, but you're happy you did them when you're done. You had a good time, and typically you're out there with your friends, and you talk about, oh yeah, this obstacle kicked my ass, and this and that and the other thing. All week I've been talking with my cousin who ran this 25K with me about the mile 12 hill, and so you end up talking about all this stuff. I'm literally sending you guys a picture of us right at the start of the race here. And so that the terrain and the experience of sort of having this discussion with your central governor and all these things, I really enjoyed that. And I think there are a lot of opportunities for people to have. So it was, how can I help people who already are reasonably strong transition to this with the lowest injury risk possible? So that is what the course is about. And it just happened to line up, at least if it happened to line up with me doing well in the 25K, top quarter of the field, third in my age group, on less than an hour a week of training specifically for it. There we go.
That's awesome, Skylar. And one thing I just wanted to read, which I took from the Hit Uni website, which I thought was really interesting to those listening who are personal trainers, is that if you are a personal trainer, you will glean a greater awareness and understanding of the needs of clients who are runners. You will be better equipped to support and program appropriate training for runners in general. I know, for example, that Discover Strength, a lot of their clients in the beginning were marathon runners because that's who they started targeting. And so I assume that they still have many marathon runners in their clientele. And so I thought this course may be very useful to a lot of the trainers there. And if you're interested in buying the course, head on over to hituni.com and you can use the coupon code HOB10 for 10% off. Another thing I wanted to mention before I get you contact details, guys, is a quick word about the membership. So the Hit Business membership is where we help people grow their high-intensity training business. Both Wayne and Skyler are members. Some of the resources they mentioned on this episode are in there. So if you're interested in getting access to those, go to highintensitybusiness.com/membership. So those resources include the monthly Q&As with the likes of people like Luke Carlson and Mike Petrella, the Discover Strength hiring process, and of course, Skyler's Getting Things Done Minimalist course, which is pending. I'm just waiting for him to get that done. When are you going to get that done for me, Skyler?
When are you going to release that business podcast that we did that'll correspond with it?
Which business podcast? Didn't I already release that one?
The last, I don't know. Did you?
Oh no, that one is.
No, you said it would be coming out at the end of October, is what you told me.
Yeah. I know you're talking about for the public podcast, right?
The
one on Rush Factor? Was it the one on Rush Factor?
It was one on Rush Factor, but I thought we were didn't we do one on? See, there's so many podcasts out there in podcast land. I can't keep up with it.
Right. Let me check that and come back to you. I need to check.
I've got the video about 2/3 of the way done, and I've got a condenser mic being delivered today.
Oh,
so,
cool.
I was surprised you didn't have a condenser mic with the pop filter.
Oh, I did. I did used to have a pop filter, but I just got rid of it because I didn't find it made any difference for me.
Your plosives are not as explosive as mine.
There you go. But no, you might be right about what you said. So let me check that and come back to you. Wayne, best way for the listeners to learn more about you and your business?
People can get on our website. It's quickfitindiana.com. And I'm looking for feedback. So all the other high intensity trainers out there, please connect with us. I built the website myself, like Skyler and so many out there were wearing all the hats. And so, I built the website from scratch using Wix, I believe. And so just trying to figure this thing out along with the rest of the community out there.
Cool.
Awesome. And you, Skyler?
Yeah, Skyler at smartstrengthaustin.com. You can shoot me an email, smartstrengthaustin.com, one giant word, no hyphens. is a way to check out our website, which actually I did not build. I had a company called Sweaty Services do for me, and I highly recommend them. Sweaty, that's SWETI. They are a marketing company that only deals with fitness websites. And so they tend to get more boot campy type businesses, but nonetheless, they are really communicative. And Maddie, who's been my sort of project manager through this whole thing, I could not recommend her more highly. They do a really, really good job and have a good lay of the land as to how to do this stuff. So highly recommend them.
Excellent.
Awesome. For everyone listening, to find the blog post for this episode, please go to highintensitybusiness.com and search for episode number 238. And until next time, thank you very much for listening.
Discover how to achieve your health and fitness goals, become a great personal trainer, and build a successful, high-intensity training business. Check out highintensitybusiness.com. highintensitybusiness.com.
This episode is brought to you by ARX, the most innovative, efficient, and effective all-in-one exercise machines I have ever seen. I was really impressed with my ARX workout. The intensity and adaptive resistance was unlike anything I've ever experienced. I love how the machine enables you to increase the negative load to fatigue target muscles more quickly, and I love how the workouts are effortlessly quantified. The software tracks maximum force output, rate of work, total amount of work done, and more in front of you on screen, allowing you to compete with your previous performance to give you and your clients real-time motivation. The ARX uses a computer-controlled motor to give you the exact amount of resistance your clients need 100% of the time. This means that the resistance can never become dangerous, is intuitive and simple to use, and can provide you with all of the results you and your clients are looking for in a fraction of the time. ARX is highly effective and efficient in delivering all of the benefits of exercise, including increased strength, muscle mass, cardiovascular conditioning, bone mineral density, and injury recovery. As well as being utilized by many high-intensity trainers to deliver highly effective and efficient workouts to their clients, ARX comes highly recommended by world-class trainers and brands, including Bulletproof, Tony Robbins, and Ben Greenfield Fitness. To find out more about ARX and get $500 off install when you place an order, please go to arxfit.com and mention HIB, that's High Intensity Business, in the How Did You Hear About Us field. So again, to get $500 off install when you place an order, head on over to arxfit.com and enter HIB in the How Did You Hear About Us field.